He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fith, when they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter. That's right. Welcome to the Fith chapter. I am Brian Chapman, and he is Little Brian Jelinek as we get ready for episode number 120. And Little Brian Jelinek is a Spartan. We know that, unlike Dennis Fithian. So while Dennis is probably rejoicing on his vacation about Hunter Dickinson coming back, I know you, Little Brian, have to be distraught about Dickinson getting ready to tear up your Spartans again.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it right now. I'll start worrying about it when we get close to the season, all right?
Hey,
not a big deal.
The Wolverines look like they're going to be loaded, so
they're going to be real good.
Yeah, I think so as well. I would say that they're my favorites to win the national championship as of right now. Ooh. With Dickinson returning.
I don't know about that, but I really like them winning the Big Ten. That's going to be no problem. NCAA tourney, not really feeling that. I can't do it.
The Big Ten didn't show up all that well in the NCAA tournament last year, so that's understandable. But the team that did fare best was Dennis's Michigan Wolverines. All right, well, definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in to episode 120. Little Brian will be joining me throughout the course of tonight's show with Dennis on vacation. And don't forget that next week we're going to be switching things up again because I will be on vacation and Dennis will be back. So Dennis and I will be going a full 2 weeks without doing a show with one another. So it'll be weird the week of, would that be July 26th? When I actually get to do a show with him again. So definitely a big opportunity, though, for Little Brian to step up. I want to thank everybody out there who's watching via YouTube, via Facebook Live, and via Twitch, and to those who are listening to the podcast via Apple, Google, and Spotify. That, of course, is available on the day of each show at approximately 11 o'clock. And if you're wondering what we're going to be talking about during the course of tonight's show, let's take a look at today's book. And as you can see in the second chapter, there's an ESPN analyst that has some first overall draft pick news and nuggets, including that the Pistons might not be locked in on Cade Cunningham, and not one, not two, not three, but four teams interested in trading up to number one for the opportunity to draft Cade. We'll give you some of the details about that and what we think the Pistons should do. In the third chapter, as we get ready for UFC 264 on Saturday night, Conor McGregor has not won a big UFC fight since the Obama administration. Is this a must-win for his legacy? Or can he afford to still salvage his legacy if he loses to Dustin Poirier again? In the fourth chapter, we've got game 2 of the NBA Finals tonight between the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bambis. We'll tell you what the recipe is for a Bambis game win in this series, if they can win a game. And we'll tell you whether they will win a game at all in this series. And then in the fifth chapter, it is the major wager where Little Brian and I will try to make you guys some money. Usually it's me and Dennis, but this time it's going to be me and Little Brian trying to make you guys some cash, trying to get you guys rich. But let's start off with the first chapter, Little Brian. And that takes us to name, image, and likeness in college sports. And it just continues every single day to bring out something new and exciting and interesting and weird now that these college athletes have the opportunity to make some money off of their names, images, and likenesses. And one of the biggest stories that I've seen is American Top Team. Are you familiar with American Top Team?
It's like MMA, right? Or like some sort of like fighting club or something like that?
Yeah, it's a gym in South Florida near Miami, and they train a lot of UFC fighters. There are a lot of other MMA fighters there. It's the home of current and former UFC champions Amanda Nunes, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and Tyron Woodley. It also is the home of some other big-name UFC fighters like Junior Dos Santos, Glover Teixeira, Yoel Romero, Jorge Masvidal, and Dustin Poirier, who's fighting against Conor McGregor in UFC 264 in the main event. But if you want to be a great fighter, you go to a place like American Top Team to train against some of the best fighters in the world, and oftentimes it pays off. But American Top Team is also a business, and they are run by a guy who I guess is a huge University of Miami Hurricanes football fan. And he is not just saying, hey, I'm going to give out some money to De'Aaron King, the starting quarterback, or a wide receiver, or the top defensive end, or like I heard that I believe Arkansas or Oklahoma or somebody like that is sponsoring the entire starting offensive line for, I think it was like a barbecue place is sponsoring the entire offensive line of like Arkansas. But this is bigger than that. American Top Team announced a $500 a month contract going to every scholarship player on the Miami Hurricanes roster. And so that means if it's $500 a month, you're basically, by being a member of the Miami Hurricanes football team, if you sign the contract, getting a $6,000 base salary just for being a part of the team. And that's whether you're an all ACC player or the fourth string right guard, a $6,000 base salary. Little Brian, what do you think about this plan by American Top Team? And do you think it could be a model for how other schools and other businesses use name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be a snowball effect, man. I mean, this is the first time we're seeing it like that because, like, when I was going through this today, I read a couple articles from like the Miami Herald and everything like that. And I've noticed too, I'm big on Instagram. I follow Barstool Sports, and they're sponsoring athletes, just like random athletes like Jace Howard at Michigan. That's what I thought mostly this NIL was going to be like, just individual companies representing individual people. However, this whole company, American Top Team, going after all the scholarship players, 90 players on Miami's football team, and paying them upwards of $540,000 total is mind-boggling. I just think you're going to start seeing it more and more over the next few years. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, it is. And I think this is a model for what we're going to be seeing, not just in the next few years, but the college football season starts in about 2 months. And if American Top Team could get this deal done in a week, then why couldn't so many other businesses do the same thing? So I think this is going to be a model for what you're going to see going on across the country. Like, it was either on Tuesday or last week. I think it was last week. I mentioned that Dan Gilbert, being a billionaire and being a big Michigan State Spartan fan, if you wanted to, could say, hey, if you're a 5-star player on MSU and or a 5-star recruit and you choose MSU, I will give you $250,000 per year to be in Rocket Mortgage advertisements, billboards, TV commercials all across the country. And if they got 4 or 5-star players, then all Dan Gilbert has to do is fork out $1 million, and he's got himself a top 5 team in the country and some people that can help him, particularly in the state of Michigan, but all across the country, to market his mortgage company. But if you're if you see like a millionaire company, a multi-million-dollar company like American Top Team being willing to shell out a little over $500,000, then why should Dan Gilbert, or why would Dan Gilbert necessarily stop at $1 million? I mean, he could decide that he wanted to do something similar with the football team, and he could give everybody $1,000, and 1,000 times 85 scholarship players, $1,000 per month. So that's roughly doubling it. That's like $1 million that he would be contributing to the football program. And if you're trying to decide between Michigan and Michigan State, or Michigan State and Iowa, or Michigan State and Penn State, and you see that Michigan State is going to be giving you a $1,000 per month base salary through Dan Gilbert's Quicken Loans, then I think that's a heck of a reason to go. Additionally, check this out. There's the ability to get multiple millionaires and billionaires together that are super fans of the team to try to increase that base salary even more. For instance, if you have, a school like USC, it's a very good football program. It's in a big time market, and there's probably lots of millionaires and billionaires who went to that great private school in the Pac-12. If they wanted to, they could get themselves, 20 millionaires, multi-millionaires and billionaires, and they could each say, hey, we're willing to donate, $1,000 per athlete or something like that for the school year. So you could have the potential of these student athletes making $100,000 a year just in base salary, because you got a bunch of alums that own big companies, big time lawyers or whatever, and say, hey, we need to get the best football players and basketball players on campus, so we're going to cut the checks.
See, I totally agree. I think schools like USC, who haven't been good in a while, or like Florida State, who haven't been good in a while, I think they're licking their chops right now for that specific reason. All these major schools have big time donors and big time alumni that have millions of dollars. It's unbelievable. So I think that when that money starts coming in from these companies and these boosters and all that, it's just going to be totally different for these schools that haven't been good in a while. So a school like USC is just super excited for something like that. But I just think
no, go ahead.
I wasn't expecting anything like this compared to like what I've been seeing for the past couple of weeks of just like I have a pair of shorts called Bird Dogs, and they're sponsoring one individual athlete, like one quarterback at some random MAC school, and just like random softball players in like Oregon are just sponsored by individual companies. But seeing a whole 90-player roster, 90-player scholarship players is just fascinating. It's unbelievable. I never thought that would happen.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, when you look at the numbers for a multi-million-dollar company, if you're a huge sports fan, it's just $540,000. That's big money to me, but I don't own a company like American Top Team. And I have to imagine that there are fans and alums of the University of Miami that are far wealthier than the guy or the people who own American Top Team. So if they want to do something similar, and as opposed to doing $500 per month, they want to give the athletes $1,500 per month. Now all of a sudden they're getting $2,000 per month total, or $24,000 per year, just for being even like the third string linebacker. And even you could get that money for redshirting. You could get $24,000 just for redshirting on the Miami Hurricanes team. And then you think about the recruiting trail. Like, I would assume that you're not going to have the head coach going out and saying, hey, come here because we've got all this NIL stuff. They might be able to do that. They might not. But if somebody comes in from, let's say, I don't know, New Mexico, the number one player in New Mexico comes in for an official visit, well, what are they going to do? They're going to talk to the players, and the players are going to take that 5-star recruit out for a steak dinner, and he's going to say, how did you guys get all this money? Oh, this is part of my base salary.
Yeah.
As a member of the football team, I get $24,000. And on top of that, if I'm a starter, I get an extra $5,000 from these companies. And as an all conference player, I get an extra $10,000. So I'm making a middle class income along with my scholarship. So I'm living the high life as the big man on campus. That's going to get that 5-star from New Mexico to commit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's hats off to Miami and hats off to American Top Team for doing this first. I mean, it's just one domino that's going to continue to fall. Just imagine when like Alabama or Ohio State get in that. They don't even need that. When they factor that in too, it's a whole different ball game.
Well, Alabama doesn't have the same type of alumni as Ohio State. I mean, Alabama, I'm sure that in the state of Alabama, it's big and certainly when you take out name, image, and likeness, they do very well. But I mean, in terms of being, having lots of, I'm sure that they have plenty of millionaires in their alumni base, but in terms of folks that are like CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and things like that, I mean, they can't match Ohio State. Like Ohio State, a lot of dumb people that went there, but they have one of the top 5 alumni bases in the country in terms of size. So you look at the fact that they've been so successful on the football field without name, image, and likeness, and then all of a sudden they get to get one of the biggest fan bases and alumni bases in the country to join in to pay their players, and those fans down there are I mean, absolute fanatics. The Buckeye players are going to be some of the wealthiest in the country.
Yep, exactly. There's
unfortunately.
I know.
as we take a look at some of the feedback, how about this from Paul W? All chapters on college hockey. Let's go. Unfortunately, Paul, we're not going to have any chapters on college hockey. But I will say this. Think about the non-revenue sports, because a lot of attention is going to be paid to revenue sports when you see the American top team went out and is giving out these $6,000 base pay scholarships or whatever you want to call it, base salaries to the football team. And there's going to be others that are going to be giving out money for basketball and other football teams as well. But you would think it wouldn't take a heck of a lot of money if you are a wealthy alum or a wealthy donor to a non-revenue team. Like, for instance, if you are a fan of University of Michigan hockey is already one of the best programs in the country. But because it's a non-revenue sport, if there's a wealthy donor who loves Michigan hockey, and there's 20 scholarship players or something like that, and they decide that every single year they want to do a name, image, and likeness deal for $120,000, well, then that's $6,000 for every single player on the hockey team, or the top, or at least the top 20 players on the hockey team are getting $6,000. And if nobody else in the Big Ten has a big wealthy donor who wants to donate $6,000 to name, image, and likeness for these players, and these players are going to say, well, it's decided between Michigan State and Michigan, or Minnesota and Michigan, but Michigan is giving me an education and $6,000 and walking around money. I'm going to take that cash. And the same thing goes for gymnastics. Nobody's paying women's volleyball players or field hockey players. If there's somebody who says, I want, Iowa to be number one in softball, and they decide they want to give, the top 15 players on the team $2,000, that's $30,000. And then Iowa wins every Big Ten championship.
Are you for college players getting paid? Do you have a problem with it? Do you care? Do you not care? I've never heard that opinion from you.
Yeah, I used to be very against it. I used to say, look, they've got their scholarships, and that's enough, because if you're a regular student, you're not getting a scholarship. So to get money on top of that doesn't make sense. But then I just continue to look at how much money these athletic departments are bringing in, how much money these companies are bringing in, how much money the coaches were bringing in, and you see the coaches making, even if it's not a Big Ten coach, they're making $1.5–2 million, or the players are just getting a free education. And then on top of that, you see these conferences adding teams and deleting teams, but certainly adding teams in order to make money. Like the Big Ten, they brought in Rutgers and Maryland, not because they wanted to add in some more big time teams. They wanted the DC market for Maryland, for the Big Ten network, and the New York City market, and more of New Jersey, by bringing in Rutgers. So when I started looking at that, and I was looking at college expansion, I was like, this is all based on money, and these players don't get a cut of that at all. So once I started looking at that, I started saying, you know what, they at the very least need to be able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, and now that's happening.
Yeah, I'm lockstep with you. I totally agree. It's the same way I had it. Just like adding in Nebraska, Rutgers, Maryland, just it's all a money grab. So the players should be compensated as well. It's that simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the one issue that I could see when you look at what American Top Team did is it could further the gap between the haves and the have-nots, because a school like Miami has a big fan base and it has a big alumni base. All the Big Ten schools are the same thing, with the exception of Northwestern not having a big fan base, but they've got a bunch of very wealthy alums. But for instance, if you look at a school like Eastern Michigan or Western Michigan, they're not going to have nearly the number of alums or the wealth in their alumni base to be able to compete with Michigan or Michigan State in the state of Michigan when it comes to base salaries. I mean, Michigan and Michigan State, if they wanted to, they could, at the drop of a hat, put together some donors and say, hey, $50,000 for every player. And if you're a starter, an extra $20,000. And if you're all Big Ten, another $10,000 on top of that. And in MAC football, it's just not going to happen. And those players that could say to themselves, you know what, I might be a starter on the MAC right away, but I could get $50,000 to sit on the bench at Michigan, I might go sit on the bench in Michigan for $50,000.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a no-brainer. If I was like a 2 or 3 star recruit quarterback coming out and like looking at start at Western right away or go to Michigan and sit on the bench for 4 years, like, yeah, I'll take the money.
A 3-star at Michigan is, I mean, if this continues the way I think it's going to go, Michigan's not going to be recruiting 3-star quarterbacks. And generally, I mean, before this, they weren't recruiting a bunch of 3-star quarterbacks. But now, if you can be a 4-star and you only need to play 1 year, your redshirt junior year, and you can make money sitting on the bench, I don't think that that you're going to see a bunch of guys that would be MAC level quarterbacks going to 3-star quarterbacks going to Michigan. They're not going to be getting offered scholarships.
Mm-hmm. Just using it for an example, just like if I'm rather start right away as a freshman or make $50,000 holding a clipboard, I'm going to take probably option B.
And you know what else you could do? If you think that the coaching is better at Michigan or another big time school, you could go get $50,000 per year your first 2 years and then transfer to start right away at Western Michigan as a redshirt sophomore.
I'm sure we're going to be seeing a ton
wealthy
of that in a couple years. Absolutely. Yeah, a richer redshirt sophomore.
All right, little Brian, let's turn the page to the second chapter, and that takes us to the Pistons and the NBA draft, or to the NBA draft, which I believe is on July 29th, and that is 3 weeks from today. And we get lots of trade rumors and lots of trade ideas for the number 1 overall pick, which is exciting because when you're sitting at 7 or you're sitting at 9, there's not a whole lot of that buzz going around, which is what the Pistons were doing in most years. But the latest comes from NBA draft guru Jonathan Givney of ESPN. And let's take a look at what he has been saying. I actually tweeted out what he had to say, but I'll post it up so everybody can take a look at it on the screen. It's kind of small, so I'll just read a little bit for you guys. Let me go back to the first one. But he basically says that Cunningham is not any kind of lock at number 1 from everything I've gathered. He said that the Pistons are doing their due diligence on Jalen Green and Evan Mobley. He said that Troy Weaver spent a week in the G League bubble and saw both Kuminga and Green play live, and he also saw Jalen Suggs and Evan Mobley, as well as Cade Cunningham, play live throughout the course of the year. And then he goes on to talk about the teams that would have the potential to trade up to number 1, and he said, quote, teams including Cleveland, Houston, New Orleans, and Oklahoma City are among those making overtures to evaluate what it would take to move up to the number 1 slot, sources say, but those talks are at an early stage. And then he goes on to say that if the Pistons make a trade, they would want to get Evan Mobley at either 2 or number 3 over Jalen Green. But in the end, he says that he doesn't think the Pistons will trade the pick. He thinks that they will stand pat at number 1 and draft Cade Cunningham. But little Brian, what do you think about the Cavs, Rockets, Pelicans, and Thunder all calling about the number 1 pick? And could any of those teams have a deal that satisfies you enough to make a deal?
First of all, I'm on record. I'm planting my flag. I don't want them to trade the pick. I want the number 1 pick. I want Cade on the Pistons. However, if there were to be a trade, I want it to be with either OKC or Houston, because OKC has a million picks in the next 7 years. Like I think it's 36 picks and 18 of them are first in the next 7 years. So yeah. I would love that for the future, but I like the idea of Houston just because they have the number 2, they have the 23rd and the 24th pick this year. And like you said, if we're not getting Cade, I want to pick at number 2 or number 3 this year. So Houston and OKC, and then the Cavs are interesting too, just because they have a ton of young players and like Colin Sexton and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I kind of want to be with OKC just for the fact I could get a king's ransom in return because they can divvy it out.
Yeah, they do have a heck of a lot of picks. They've got 18 first-round picks through 2017 and actually 17 through 2026. Mm-hmm. So a ton of picks I mean, 3 picks a year, 4 picks a year. It's amazing that a team could stack up that many. But when you look at all the deals they've made, trading away Paul George, trading away I think they still got a James Harden pick or 2 in there, trading away Russell Westbrook. They got a first-round pick, I believe, for Steven Adams. All these different first-round picks. I think they also got a couple from Phoenix for the Chris Paul trade. Just a bleep ton of draft picks are available if you trade with OKC. I was actually a bit surprised that the story said the Pistons would target Evan Mobley over Jalen Green if they traded out of the first pick, just because the Pistons already have Jeremy Grant, Isaiah Stewart, and Mason Plumlee in the front court. And while Evan Mobley projects to be better than all of those guys, if they don't get anybody else and they have those 3 in Stewart, Plumlee, and Grant, they're set. They're fine in the front court. I mean, it's not going to be the best in the NBA, but it could be pretty good in the coming season. They need a guard who can score 20 points a game in the next couple of years, and then when necessary, get to 30 or 40. And there are 2 guards that I think can do that in this draft. Maybe potentially 3 if you think Jalen Green can get there. I'm sorry, Jalen Suggs can get there, but definitely Jalen Green and Cade Cunningham are the guys that can be the high volume scorers that you can put on their back. You don't want to go into next season with Killian Hayes and Hamidou Diallo, or Killian Hayes and Josh Jackson, or Killian Hayes and Frank Jackson as your starting guards. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst case scenario in the world. But if I had the preference of taking Jalen Green and starting him, or having a logjam with Evan Mobley, I'm going to take Jalen Green. But when I look at the trade scenarios and the 4 teams that are out there, the Pelicans, that doesn't make any sense, because I look at the draft picks they have this year. They've got the number 10, which out of the four teams that are looking to trade up, that's the lowest first pick in the draft that any one of these teams have, is number 10. In addition, they've got the 34, the 40, and the 43, a trio of second-round picks this year. Not interested. I don't know what they have in the future, but trading all the way back to 10, and then you're not going to get Zion Williamson. Not interested in doing any deal with the Pelicans. The Thunder, you mentioned it. They got they have the 6th pick, but they also have the number 16 pick in this year's draft. They got the 35, 36, and 55. But here's how it all plays out. 2 picks next year, 4 picks in 2023, and talk about first-round picks, 3 in 2024, 3 in 2025, 3 in 2026, 17 in the next 6 years. They also have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who a lot of folks think could be on the trade block if the Pelicans want to trade up. I believe it was The Athletic suggested maybe it could be the number 6 pick in the draft and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the number 1 pick. I'd say if you wanted to put those 2 pieces along with another first-round pick, your 2020, one of those 2024 picks, I'd be interested in that, because I don't just Gilgeous-Alexander and the number 6 pick isn't enough, because if you're going to give up Cade Cunningham, who's going to be a star, you want to get yourself a star in return, or at least a whole bunch of first-round picks. And Gilgeous-Alexander, to me, is not a star player, and I don't think he's going to become one, even though he put up well over 20 points per game on a garbage team this year. But if you're going to get the number 6 pick in the draft and another first-round pick in the future out of that huge bevy, then that's something I think should be considered. I would definitely take calls from the Cavaliers and the Houston Rockets, because then you could trade back and still get one of the top 3 players in the draft. The Cavs don't have as much draft capital because they've got the number 3 pick, and they've got their own future first-round picks, and they've got those recent first-round picks. But I would definitely be more interested in trading back 1 spot. You mentioned that the Rockets have the number 2, the 23, and the 24 pick. They also have the number 18 pick in this year's draft as well. So they want to get rid of some of their picks. They don't want to have 4 first-round picks this year. So, I mean, you think about the ability to get the number 2 and let's say the 18 pick, you could get Jalen Green and Ayu Dosunmu. So you have your starting shooting guard and your backup shooting guard. You could get Evan Mobley and Ayu DeSumo. So your starting shooting guard and a big man that could be a superstar in the future. You could get yourself, a whole bunch of different options, or you could get the number 2 pick, get the number 24 pick, and a future first round pick from the Houston Rockets. I think a lot of different options, but certainly the Pelicans are out. My top 2 choices would be New Orleans, not New Orleans, the Thunder, just because they have so many picks, and then Houston because they have so many picks this year, including the number 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just leaving again. I don't want to leave the number 1 pick. I'm not good. Regardless. I'm not leaving 1, 2, or 3. There's no way in hell I want to go back to drafting at 4, 5, 6, or 7. I just think.
Well, what if OKC says, all right, we're going to give you the number 6 pick this year. We're going to give you, since we have so many other picks, a first-round pick in 2022, first-round pick in 2023, and a first-round pick in 2025.
Does it matter if the picks are protected or not, or no?
Well, some of the picks are protected, some of them aren't, because some of them are their own picks. Some of them are picks that they acquired via trade that have protections on them.
I can't do it. I honestly can't do it. I think
the 6th pick this year, one next year, one in 2023, and one in 2025.
No, Chapman, I totally get it, and I think in any other sport, I'm totally down for. I just think with the way the Pistons have been playing and how bad the Pistons have been, I think it's so unique and so great to have the number 1 overall pick to bring some juice and life into the Pistons organization. I don't care if they give me a king's ransom. I'm keeping the number 1 pick because I think Cade Cunningham is going to be an absolute stud in the league. I think he's going to offer 25 to 30 points for an average. I want Cade Cunningham on the team. However, just to play devil's advocate, if they're handing me 5 first-round picks, how do you say no to that?
Well, I think I offered you 4, but if they offer 5.
If they're offering 4, you can't say no. 4 or 5 picks.
You just said no. Just said no.
I'm playing devil's advocate here because there's no way I'm leaving the first overall pick. I just think it's interesting to offer.
What if they let me look back at what they have again. What if they offered you the number 6 pick and all 4 of their first round picks in 2023?
They have 4 picks in 2023.
Yes,
4 first-round picks.
4.
Jeez.
Now, some of them are protected, so they might go over into 2024 or 2025, but you're going to get those picks eventually.
Dude, you can't
the
do
6
that to me.
and 4 picks in 2023.
I mean, you're obviously saying yes, right? You can't say no. You can't say no.
Exactly. You can't say no.
If I'm getting 4 first-round picks in 1 year, that's just unbelievable. That would never happen in real life. There's no way OKC would give up 4 first-round picks in 1 year.
Maybe they're thinking to themselves, look, we suck. Not only do we want Cade Cunningham because he's a great player, but he played his college basketball in this state, so that would be a huge fan favorite to bring the Oklahoma State guy and keep him in Oklahoma. They might say there's no other way we're going to get a superstar or a star level player, because I don't know that Cade's going to be a superstar. I don't see him as being as good as Anthony Davis or being like LeBron James or some other guys that were surefire, absolute, not just number 1 picks, but Hall of Famers the day they were drafted. And I think that there's still legit debate about who's going to be the top player in the draft. The one big problem with going back to 6 and getting all of their first round picks in 2023 is that there's still the belief that it's a 5 or a 4 player draft. And by trading back down to 6, you're eliminating your shot at getting one of those guys, unless you believe some of the hype about Scotty Barnes jumping up to 5. And then you could settle for Jonathan Kuminga, who's still not as good as a top 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's just that simple. Yeah, it's like a 4, maybe 5 player draft this year. I am not leaving the number 1 pick. I'm planting my flag. I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm not doing anything. They're drafting number 1. I'm not taking anything else for it.
All right. Beth on Facebook says it's a smokescreen by Weaver. It will be motorcade. Weaver's playing chess. Latest news I heard was Suggs was Casey's pick. Look, I don't think they're strongly considered. I would assume Casey knows they're not going to get Jalen Suggs unless they trade back to number 4, or perhaps he falls to number 5. But Troy Weaver came out on draft night and said that he viewed Cade Cunningham as a top player on their board. I think he is playing chess. I think he is evaluating all of his options as he should. And I think he is entertaining phone calls as he should because, like we said, if some team offers him 5 or 6 first-round picks, it's hard to say no to them.
You can't say no.
Also from Keith, what's up, fellas? I really think Trey is in play, but it's got to be something to knock our socks off. Trey Young? The Hawks aren't giving up Trey Young.
No way.
Also, and right, OKC is really the only team that has the ammunition. Houston does too. Houston has 4 first-round picks this year, including the number 2 overall pick. If they offer the number 2 and the number 18 and the number 23, they've got a deal. They offer number 2 and the 23 and a first-round pick next year that's unprotected, they've got a deal. At least I think so. Also, Keith says, where's Dennis? He's on vacation this week, so he'll be back next week, and I will be gone next week. So we won't have our full cast of characters back until the 20th of July.
I'll be here though, Keith, so it's totally fine. We don't need little Brian Chapman.
Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll have you, maybe we won't, because you've come up with excuses in the past.
There's no excuses. I was flying, and honestly, my power with the storm that happened yesterday, my internet has been so bad all day, and it finally just came back 5 minutes before showtime. So you cannot say these are excuses because I have work, I had to fly, and the internet was bad. But I know you missed me. That matters.
Yeah, your internet just cut out, so nobody heard what you just said. All right, let's turn the page to the fake news. Let's turn the page to the 3rd chapter, and that takes us to UFC 264, where they've got a nice fight card that includes Carlos Condit on the prelims. If you don't want to pay for the pay-per-view, you can still see that UFC veteran in the prelims. On the main pay-per-view card, you got Sean O'Malley fighting. You've got a woman beating NFL player and Greg Hardy, who, I mean, it's kind of like a story of redemption for him. He can't play in the NFL, but he's learning that there is a place for him to fight and make money, and he's actually been pretty good. Greg Hardy, he's on the UFC pay-per-view card. You got an exciting co-main event between Gilbert Burns and Stephen Thompson, and then in the main event, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor 3. They had their rematch back in January after McGregor took the first fight several years ago. Poirier knocked him out in January in the rematch, and now in the main event, it's not for a title. It's Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, part 3, and there's a lot at stake in this trilogy. The winner is going to get to face Charles Oliveira for the lightweight belt. If Dustin Poirier wins, then he'll have beaten McGregor twice, which would be nice for his resume, and it would cement his name as one of the biggest names in the UFC. If McGregor wins, then it would get his career back on track after losing 2 out of the last 3 UFC fights. But if he loses, McGregor's image is probably in a much different spot, given that he hasn't won a big fight since November of 2016. That's the Barack Obama administration, the last time he won a big fight. So Little Brian, and that was on November 12, 2016. But Little Brian, is Saturday a must-win for Conor McGregor's legacy?
Well, so first of all, talking about UFC, I feel like Stephen A. Smith talking about hockey. I don't know a damn thing about the UFC, but I would say yes, just because for the fact that if McGregor doesn't go out and win after everything he's done, especially in 2016, where he looked like he was the king of the world, he's going to just get washed down. And like the only thing left of Conor McGregor is going to be his name, and it's been a have-been. Like he'll become like a celebrity boxer or something. I don't know. But he has to win on Saturday to keep his name and who he is alive in the UFC to get to that lightweight fight too against Oliveira.
Yeah, I think it's a must-win for him as well. I mean, everybody knows who Conor McGregor is because he won 3 UFC belts. And in 2016, like you said, he was at the top of the world, and he thought that it was time for him to go out there and just chase some money. And he knows that there's a heck of a lot of money in boxing, particularly if you're going to go out and fox Floyd Mayweather, even if you lose the fight. And that's what he did. He went out there, he trained for a year, he made $100 million and lost to the most boring boxer of all time. And he was set for life and set for generations with all that money. But the problem with that is he wanted to come back to the UFC after that, and he had spent so much time not doing UFC and mixed martial arts training that he lost it. And he came back, and his first fight was against Khabib Nurmagomedov, one of the top 5 UFC fighters of all time, an undefeated fighter, and he lost the belt in that fight. And then he took a year off after that. And what the heck did he do? After he fought Khabib, he fought a washed-up Cowboy Cerrone after taking a year off just so that he could get a win. That was a fight where you knew, and I knew, that the UFC was just orchestrating a fight so he could get a win, so they could say, look, our boy is back, your fan favorite is back. And then after that, he took another year off so that he could get prepared to fight a real fighter in Dustin Poirier, and he got knocked out in the first or the second round. So there's been a lot of time off. There's been screwing around with the boxing. As you may have noticed, I don't call him Conor McGregor. I call him Con McGregor because during that time he was going around committing a lot of crimes and becoming a convict. So he was doing everything it seemed but mixed martial arts fighting. And now I think his career is at a turning point. Either he bounces back and wins this fight, or we're going on about 5 years since he's won a major fight. He will have lost 3 out of his last 4 fights in the UFC, and 4 out of his last fights total, if you include the Floyd Mayweather fight. And he'll be a 32-year-old who a lot of folks are going to be saying is washed up, and he's certainly not going to be headlining any pay-per-view events. If he's on a pay-per-view card, he's going to be the co-main event or the 3rd fight or the 4th fight, or maybe he's headlining a non-pay-per-view fight. He's going to be fighting like the 6th or 7th best fighter in his division, and that's not what he's used to. So he absolutely has to win this fight for his legacy, or else he'll just be known as a guy who had a high rise, made a heck of a lot of money, and then fell down, but at least fell down as an extremely rich person thanks to Floyd Mayweather.
Didn't he publicly fight with Dana White too, or something like that? Dana White. Wasn't there some sort of feud about him wanting to fight lesser people just so he could win? Or
well, I mean,
I don't really know.
He's been like some of the other fighters and talked about, oh, I'm gonna retire if I don't get this fight. And usually that's all just talk, because fighters typically take multiple months off at a time. So if somebody says they're gonna retire, it's not that big a deal. Sometimes fighters take a year or 2 off to recover from injuries, so it's not that big a deal if somebody says that they want to retire. And we know that Con McGregor is all about himself. He's all about putting on a big show. And so if he can get headlines by saying I'm retiring, or I've got a dispute with Dana White, or he needs to pay me more money, then he's going to do it. It's just it comes with the territory.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Conor McGregor fan to begin with. I just think he's just a huge jerk, to put it in the best PG way possible. I couldn't care less if he wins, if he gets his ass kicked. Like, I don't really care at the end of the day on Saturday. I just want to see a good fight. I'll probably end up watching it, but he has to win the fight, though, regardless, to keep, because you're right. If he loses, it's just going to be, oh, yeah, remember Conor McGregor in 2016? Remember how good he was then? And then just absolutely nothing after that. He has to win.
Yeah, and I don't think he will win. I think that Poirier is going to knock him out again.
Do you think the UFC needs him to win, or is that not a factor at all?
I think the UFC would like him to win because, like, for instance, Dustin Poirier said that after beating Conor McGregor in January, he had the option to fight for the lightweight title. And he chose not to do so because he knew that a trilogy fight with Conor McGregor would net him a bigger paycheck for that particular fight. He said that it could net him, anywhere between 5 and 10 times as much money to fight Conor McGregor than it would even if he won the lightweight title over Charles Oliveira, because eyeballs want to pay to see Conor McGregor fight more than they want to see Charles Oliveira fight.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens.
They want him to win.
Yeah. I don't think he
but
will. I'm with you. I think he'll get knocked out.
yeah, and I hope so too, because McGregor used to be one of my favorite fighters, but once he started going on a crime spree and he started to think that he was bigger than everything, that's when I lost my respect for him, and he became one of my least favorite fighters. And I was thrilled to see him lose in January, and thrilled also to bet against him and win in January.
Is he the betting favorite this weekend or not? Or is
No, Poirier is a small favorite. I think last time I checked, it was Poirier was like minus 126. I can check on it right now. I'll give you the FanDuel odds, but I think I saw earlier today that he was at like minus 126. I mean, it's close to a pick'em. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Poirier is minus 126 and McGregor is minus 102. So you're giving up juice no matter who you pick, but small favorite right now for Dustin Poirier.
What's the age difference too? Is Poirier a lot younger?
I know Khan is 32.
Yeah.
Poirier, I believe, is younger. I think he's in his late 20s. Let me see.
I'm not sure if stuff like that totally matters, if it's like a 3 or 4 year age difference. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing is Khan is still in the prime of his athletic career. It's not until you get into your mid to late. Oh, actually, they're both 32 years old. So there you go. Okay. So and that's the thing. Another reason why this is a big fight and it's a must win for him, because it's not like he's going to be getting more athletic. He's only going to be staying the same, plateauing, or getting less athletic. So he's got to win this fight, or else people are going to say, like you said, remember when he used to be great.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, though, he fell on a lot of money, so I can't really be too upset about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks would make the same decision as him. Take a year off to box and make $100 million and then get back to it. Just hopefully those people also would not decide to go out and commit some crimes as well.
Let's flip the page.
Yeah. Fighting Mayweather pays, crime doesn't pay. Correct. All right, let's turn the page to the 4th chapter. And that takes us to the NBA Finals, where we got game 2 tonight. Game 1, the Suns cooking up the Bambis 118-105. Giannis played in the game and did have that great chase down block, but he was not 100%. Only had 20 points, 7-12 from the free throw line when you had the fans counting to 13. Ayton, a rebound shy of a 2020 game. You had Chris Paul and Devin Booker combining for 59. And they're going to try to take a commanding 2-0 lead against the Bambis tonight, while Milwaukee will try to even up the series at 1. And there really wasn't much doubt about who was going to win that game as you were watching it. The Bucks, the Suns had an early lead. I think it was a 4-point lead after the first quarter. They just kept on slowly but surely expanding it until the game was over. But I predicted on Tuesday that this would be a sweep, but if there's going to be an opportunity for the Bambis to win a game, you might think that game 2 is an opportunity. I'll bounce back after making adjustments. You might say that the best opportunity for them to win a game is game 3 or game 4. But little Brian, what is the recipe for the Bambis to get a win in this series? And do you think that they will, or are you breaking out the brooms like I am and saying this is going to be a sweep?
I don't want it to be a sweep, first of all, just because I want at least 5 or 6 games, because I've really enjoyed the NBA playoffs this year. But there's 3 things I have for the recipe for the Bucks to win at least 1 game. 1, the Bucks have to keep Jrue Holiday hot. I mean, he was basically a non-factor in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, averaging 15 points a game. But in the Eastern Conference Finals, he jumped up to averaging 22 points, 10 assists. He shot 46% from the floor and 37% behind the arc. So Jrue Holiday was hot, and that really helped out the Bucks to overcome the Hawks. Second of all, they have to keep pace and even win the 4th quarter. They've been one of the worst 4th quarter teams in the playoffs all year, and I truly believe that Giannis is not a good closer. I think, to begin with, I think the Bucks are one of the most overrated, fraudulent franchises I've ever seen.
Bambis.
The Bambis are super fraudulent. Giannis isn't a closer. They're not good in the 4th quarter. They're shooting really poorly, and there's been some questionable lineups thrown out for the Bambis in the 4th quarter. So that's the second thing. And finally, you can't let Book beat you, which is easier said than done. It's going to be virtually impossible because he's been out of his mind the whole playoffs. But, I mean, try to make like Jay Crowder or Bridges or someone just try to beat you because they've been shooting like absolute crap from the floor. They're good defensively, but they're not super good offensively. So keep Drew Holiday hot. Try to keep pace and actually win a fourth quarter, and don't let Book beat you. That's my recipe for beating the Suns for at least one game. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Suns in 5 or 6 would be great just for the series, but I'm saying Suns in 5. They'll get one win.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have the Bambis winning any games. Like I mentioned, I predicted that sweep before the series started, and I'm sticking to that. And if the Bambis are going to win a game, I think it's not going to come on the road because bench players typically play better at home than they do on the road. They only had 22 bench points in game 1, which is not good enough. Also, in home games, Giannis doesn't have to worry about the crowd terrifying him when he's at the free throw line by counting 1, 2, 3. Like he gets terrified by that. He gets rattled. He gets so rattled that he puts up air balls. But at home, sweet home in Milwaukee, he doesn't have to worry about the fans trolling him by saying numbers in numerical order. So I think that game 2 is out of the question. Game 5 is out of the question. Game 7 is out of the question for the Bambis. But game 3 or game 4 being home games, because they don't have to deal with those issues, I think would certainly be part of the recipe. And I think the best chance is going to be them for to win in game 3. If they lose the first 3 games of the series, then game 4 is going to be a formality. It's relatively easy to just go to the press conference after you lose game 3 and say, hey, we got to take it one game at a time. We're just going to try to win that first game. But once the microphones get cut off, you realize, hey, a couple days I got to get ready to hit the golf course. I got to get ready to go to the beach because we couldn't win any of the first 3 games, and including a loss at home. So game 3 is the first opportunity. The fans are going to be out of their minds in Milwaukee because they're having an NBA playoff, an NBA Finals home game. They need to ramp up their team. So I think that's going to be very critical for them. And the Bambis are going to feel like their backs are against the wall. And they've shown every once in a while, particularly in home playoff games, that they can blow a team out. I don't think that they're going to do that, but they have the talent to do so when they don't play stupid basketball. And here's the other key. Giannis had 2 days off to get ready for game 1 of the NBA Finals. He had 1 day off yesterday and now another game today. He's going to have 2 more days off, Friday and Saturday, before Sunday's game 3. So perhaps that extra time off will get him a little bit healthier so he can get closer to 100%. One thing we did not see from him in game 1 was his ability to just back up to the 3-point line and take somebody off the dribble using his explosiveness. I don't know if we're going to see that today, but perhaps with the day of rest that he had yesterday and then the 2 days to come of rest, he could be the healthiest that we've seen him since before he messed up his knee in Atlanta. And that, I think, is the best recipe for the Bambis to get a win. I still don't think it's going to happen.
God, I don't want to sweep. I mean, if they go back to Milwaukee,
I'm sick of the Bambis. I want them to get swept.
If they go back to Milwaukee down 2-0, or they're going into game 4 down 3-0, it's obviously over. But I just think 5 games, man. I don't think the Bambis will be able to keep up. I truly believe that. I think they can squeak out one game, either in Phoenix tonight or game 3 is in Milwaukee, correct?
Yeah, 3 and 4.
3 and 4. I think they can at least win one of those games, and it's going to come back to Phoenix after that.
Yeah,
like,
they can.
I
don't trust them.
I believe they will. I don't trust them to win, but I think they'll squeak out one win. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other thing that I think the Bambis need to do is they need to put the Thanasis Antetokounmpo out there because he doesn't play a lot. He didn't play at all in game 1, but he's a pretty strong defender and certainly a guy that puts a lot of effort out there. And the guys that they're putting out there trying to defend Booker and Paul were not working. When they tried to get one of the guards out there, it didn't work. When they tried to stick Brook Lopez on Chris Paul, just do a step back mid-range jumper from the elbow and hit that. perhaps a guy like the Nets and Antetokounmpo, at least to try to shake things up, could be an answer on the perimeter and on those pick and rolls, because the pick and rolls have been killing the Bambis.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be better defense on both Book and CP3, and I don't see anybody doing that on the Bambis roster.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
And I also don't know how they stop DeAndre Ayton, particularly if Giannis is less than 100%. I mean, he had 22 and 19 in game one. And I don't think he's going to get a 20-20 game, but he could put up similar numbers in game two.
Dude, Ayton looks so good. He's been so much fun to watch so far.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, little Brian, let's turn the page now to the fourth chapter. And that takes us to the major wager. Usually it's me and Dennis trying to make folks some money, but now we're going to put you on the spot. Tell us what you're looking forward to betting on either tonight or this weekend as you try to make some money on some of your sports betting apps on your phone.
Well, like I was talking about, I don't think the Bucks are going to get swept, so I'm going to take them in game 2 in Phoenix tonight at plus 164.
Road win.
Road win, the only win in the series for them. I'm feeling it for the Bucks tonight. My sister has a Bucks tattoo that looks just like the logo. I'm all in on them, and I also like the Tigers money line in Minnesota tonight because the Twins are trash. They're terrible, and I feel good about that. So go Tigers, go Bucks, man.
Yeah, you mean Bambis?
Go Bambis. Excuse me.
There you go. I think the Tigers can win today. They got Scoobel on the mound against a bad team. I think that could net you some money. I bet on the Tigers as well. For my major wager, I'm not going with something. Well, first of all, on Tuesday, let me remind you, I picked the Brewers plus 1.5 against the Mets, even though Jacob deGrom was on the mound, and it was a push because the game got rained out. So whether you took my advice or you didn't take my advice, you didn't lose any money on that game. Tonight, like I said, not going with the NBA Finals. I'm going to the UFC. I'm going to UFC 264, and I'm not going to see the majority of the fight card because I'm going to be on the air on the radio until midnight, but I am going to try to race downtown after midnight to get there before the main event starts. It shouldn't start till about 12:20 at the earliest, maybe 12:30. If some of the earlier fights go longer, they go to the decisions and get into the third round, then perhaps I can catch the end of the second to last fight. But I should be there for the entirety of McGregor versus Poirier 3. That said, my major wager is not the main event. It's on that fight card, but it's not the main event. And one of the big reasons I'm choosing UFC 264 to bet on is because in UFC 263, I was 5 for 5 in my picks. So I'm hoping to keep that momentum going. But the co-main event is Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Thompson. Gilbert Burns is 6-1 in his last 7 fights. The only fight that he lost was his last fight to Kamaru Usman for the championship belt. Stephen Thompson has won 2 in a row, but he's just 3-3 in his last 6 fights. So not the same caliber of resume in the last 6 or 7 fights that Gilbert Burns has. Additionally, when you bet on UFC fights, you don't necessarily have to bet on who the winner is. You can also bet on different props like you can in baseball. Like you can say, I think that this guy's going to hit a home run, or I'm going to bet the under, or I'm going to bet on the number of strikeouts. Same thing goes for UFC, where I noticed that in 7 of the last 8 fights that Stephen Thompson has been in, the fight has gone the distance. It's gone to the judges. It wasn't a knockout or a submission or some kind of finish. Additionally, in 4 out of the last 7 fights that Burns has fought in, where he's won 6 of them, they've gone to the judges for a decision. So what I'm going to do is I'm betting Gilbert Burns to win by decision. That's at plus 390. Gilbert Burns to win by decision.
Sick. Cool. UFC stuff. Congratulations, man. I don't get it at all. Cool.
Hey, you said you're going to watch. And if you do watch, bet on Gilbert Burns to win by decision, and perhaps you'll be more into it and you can make some money.
I'll definitely watch some of it on Twitch. I don't find myself either doing the pay-per-view or going to a bar to watch it. We'll find it on Twitch.
Well, what, illegally streamed on Twitch?
Oh, absolutely. That's the only way. That's how I watched that. I remember that's how I watched the Mayweather McGregor fight back in the day. I was in a bar in New York watching it through Twitch.
Well, I'm not going to go out there and promote illegal activity, but definitely want to thank everybody for tuning into episode 2. Or why do I keep saying 2? 120, 121 next week. Little Brian says he'll be back. Dennis will be back. I'll be gone, but we promise to give you 5 more fantastic chapters. For Little Brian, I am Brian Chapman for the 5th chapter. Have a great weekend, everybody. He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the 5th chapter.